Peace, family. You're tuned in to episode 9 of Diva and the Young, Mastering Voice and Vision and Leadership.
I'm Manifesto, your diva info, helping you unlock the power of presence and voice.
And I'm Dara aka Everybody's Own, here to build conscious culture and sales that feel like truth.
In every episode, we blend soul and strategy to amplify your leadership
and help you move through life with purpose, clarity, and real alignment.
So, you ready to turn up that resonance?
Let's get it. Welcome. Episode 9, Diva and the Young. And just like every episode, we're going to start this episode with segment 1, our recap from last week. Last week, we spoke about, refresh my memory?
Yeah, we spoke about that self-sabotage in relationships, masculine and feminine. When they're not being a man came up. Man gossip, man grief. We're talking about men, obviously. We're also talking about a little bit about addiction culture, sex for fun, and that men should probably watch the movie Barbie.
I agree. I mean, there's a lot of pink in Barbie. Let's not get it twisted.
It's a lovely color that we could all enjoy.
A ton of pink. So if you have an adverse effect to pink, don't watch it. But in terms of, in a playful way, giving us an idea of kind of what we're experiencing now as masculine and feminine energies on this plane, it gave a really good, fun, entertaining explanation, and it kind of broke it down, and it was really fun and enjoyable. And I thought it was a pretty cool movie, a movie I didn't want to watch.
I wanted to watch it, so whatever.
You watched it, and I didn't even watch it with you the first time we watched it.
Yeah, I know, because I think I'm out with a friend, right?
Yeah, which I was not interested in going.
Who I went with. But yeah, no, I liked it too, but it was interesting, like the interplay of what we think of as masculine, what we think of as feminine, and think about like what the roles of being a man and a woman, and like it was really interesting how some of it was like right on, some of it was so skewed. But that was the point. We talk about it in more detail. Not a ton more detail, but like specifically what we kind of liked and did not like about that.
Yeah, that was fun. Okay, let's move into segment 2 today. A transforming moment with Monetha.
Tis I. So because we're talking a little bit about religion and relationship this week, we're going to talk about what does that have to do with your voice? What are like kind of the spiritual aspects of voice? And why it's important to choose where you want to start using your vocal power that we've been talking about every week, okay? Why is it important? Because where we start is how we gain the most impact from whatever we do. So how we start with what energy and what intention means everything to how much we're going to play a part and what happens next and what people walk away with, what they get to take home with them that is going to make their lives better, right? So where I come from on this is that the voice is very much like next to the breath. It is the most divine thing about us. The breath, I think, is the first, even in the Bible, we were breathed into us the breath of life, and that is how we were animated, right? And that idea, what I take away from that is that the divine aspect of us lives still within our breath. So there's wisdom there. There's things that we can learn about ourselves and others when we're more in tune with our breath. And then the next kind of phase of the breath in the body is voice. So how do we create things from the unseen breath to the actual sensed felt voice when we are connecting, communicating, and trying to make a difference in the world, right? So for me, that first step is the understanding that the voice itself is important, right? And how do we understand that? Is that we get present or aware of the value of our voice. We get to learn great things, like I just spoke about. If you've never thought about voice that way, how it gets to communicate the higher desires, the higher aspirations that we have, and bring us all into a higher sense of what we can accomplish together. But that presence and awareness is the first place we have to go to be able to choose, because otherwise we're not being aware. We're not being aware of what we want to make out of what's happening. We're not being aware of the factors that may be playing a role. There's now time and space. And even if we get a result from it, we're not able to track why it worked because we're not aware, right? So the first step of choosing where to start is to get into presence, get into awareness, okay? The next step is to expand the possibilities. So this is where we get to drop the rules, the religiosity, the training, the structures of society that say this is the way you have to do it if you're going to be a good person, right? You want to drop all those have tos, because when you're in creation mode, that does not apply. You get to create it however you want to create it. And then, of course, being in awareness is going to tell you if it's in line and in line with your integrity, in line with the fullest possibility for everybody involved. Okay. And so that once we are in that possibility, how do we get back to that place of the awareness working through that infinite possibility is focus. So where are we wanting to focus? And that goes back to a lot of what we've already talked about through these segments is what are we paying attention to? What is our intention? What do we want people to walk away with? Why? Why are we talking about it? What is important about what we are going to do, what we're getting ready to start, right? So that's their essential elements of being able to use that vocal power impactfully, is to have the right sense of how we start and how to choose that next great thing that you're going to create.
Cool. It's it's funny because when I was growing up and I was always in those moments of conflict, I would always feel it in my voice, like just me speaking to someone about something created so much more energy in me that in those moments it could have gone either way, and it did go either way because as a younger person, you don't really have the vocabulary to sort differences out, and so you sort them out physically. Especially little boys, we sort our differences out physically because talking was so nerve-wracking. Didn't feel natural talking about your issues growing up. Kids see it today. Their indoctrination is different from our indoctrination. We were indoctrinated by the baby boomers. And as bad as people talk about that generation of people, their parents were worse. Like the absolute worst. You have no idea.
No idea.
Our parents were terrible. Like Gen X parents, they were hard. Some of you have boomers as parents, maybe, but to be honest, man, like the boomers' parents, well, that's a hard ass generation. And those guys are rough. And so there can be a lot of trauma and suppression, and you're going to do this no matter what you do, because those were not people you disagreed with. they didn't go for the disagreements.
And wasn't just psychological. A lot of like our trauma is psychological nowadays, and that's not for everybody, obviously, but a lot of us. And back then, like they beat it into you.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That was true for my mom. It's
True for
definitely
my mom, yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
trickled down a little bit, not as much as it could have, for
Oh, it
sure.
trickled down a lot for my parents.
Trickled down a little
Yeah.
bit.
They were definitely, like how you have a sign on your house that says "Welcome, all are welcome. Come on in." Our parents in the black community sign would have been "Spare the rod, spoil the child," and ain't no spoiled children living here. you know.
Well, and that's the thing is that when you're afraid of something, again, it all ends up being mental because it's the memory of that thing that's what's keeping you in that box. But like when you're afraid of something, the bottom line is you think that if you cross the line, that you'll die in one way, shape, or form, or you'll be on your way to death. That's pretty much the where all fear comes from. That's why they say if you do things that are like death defying, you lose a lot of that fear because you realize, oh, that's not really going to kill me. This would kill me if it goes
Right,
wrong,
right.
but that's not going to kill me. But yeah, it is something that we have to realize that even if it is just in our head, it's a very real thing to the ego that dying is a real thing that your body's trying to save you from.
So, question for the end of the segment. Now, knowing all of that, what information are you giving the young people in your life? Are you giving them through fear? Or are you giving them through choice? The choice to have an open mind, the choice to do your own research. How are you parenting or mentoring people today in your life? That's the question for the end of this segment. We're going to start asking questions at the end of the segments, which gives you a chance to think, maybe generate some more questions in your mind about what we're talking about in this episode. So feel free to send us some of your feedback about this segment. Be specific on any of those questions. But as we move on to segment 3, which is our unking moment. Come on over here, nieces and nephews. Let me holler at you. So, our unking insight today is about our topic, um, but more specifically, it's about how we how we take information like we're talking about, and how does it process in our minds that lead us to our highest outcomes. So when I think about, um, for me especially, I'm Captain Rebellion. Like there was no rule you gave me that I wasn't willing to break. And the moment I understood the consequences for breaking rules and were good with them, I broke as many as possible. Only because there's always been something in me that rebelled. I'm just naturally a rebellious person. I'm naturally going to think that there's another way to do things, right? Because we're trained to follow doctrine. We're not trained to follow our destiny. I had big dreams and big visions as a little kid. There's things that I wanted to accomplish that, those our generation of parents, like I said, the boomers, and then the generation before that, I don't even think they have a name, to be honest. He wasn't naming them. They wouldn't have accepted it anyway. Just like I'm more like that because I'm more rebellious, but I'm rebellious with an open mind. And what I mean by that is I rebelled against everything until I found out that for myself that, well, that was the best way to do something. That really was the best way to handle things. And I think our parents got it right more often than not when it came to things that were rights and wrongs, things we should and shouldn't do. How about not playing with matches in the house type of stuff? Well, I'm rebellious. I played with matches. And then the house almost burned down. So guess what? They were correct. You should not matches in the house. You know what I mean? But that's the kind of kid I was. I really needed to know for myself. I needed the understanding. And I think today, because so much information is instantaneous information. Um, that kids don't really get an opportunity to experiment, or maybe parents are too afraid to let your child experiment with different philosophies and ideas, right? And so, this nation, if you're listening to us from this nation and from most nations across the world, most of them have an assigned religion. Either you're a Muslim country, a Buddhist country, or Christian country. Most people grow up in an assigned religion. Now that does limit your choices because most of those assigned religions don't want you learning about the other religions. And so it's funny because that's the way we learn. That's the way every generation gets an opportunity to move forward in our own personal evolution, is by new things popping up, new philosophies that need to be tested, um, and vetted out, for lack of a better word, for us to gain true understanding, true gnosis. Um, so for the nieces and nephews, I just want you guys to understand that there are choices that we make that we don't understand why we make them until we live through them. And then when that opportunity comes back around to make another choice, you'll understand why one choice is better for you than the other choice because you've lived it. Now, if there's a third option, take the third option. Let's see what happens.
Third option is learning in advance.
Right.
That is the third option. I understand why boys are so hard at it, but I know it's a fact. It's it's one of those things that we're supposed to love people, and so I unconditionally, and so we do. Unfortunately, like I mean, sometimes unfortunately, the way that boys just like kind of do whatever, and they're still like, oh, it's more born than a baby, But I think those are the things that we get to choose. I think there's kind of the real life hardship and learning from that, and there's the you see somebody close to you going through something, and you learn from that. And I think that's an important way to do things if we want to, and then the other part is that whenever you think you're skipping over a lesson, it's usually going to come back anyway. So you're not really going to miss anything. But what's important is that we understand from the greater perspective, which is not from necessarily past orientation. Even if you live through it, it's about what you're creating, you know?
Yeah, even in the moment of going through it, you're creating a new path. You're creating a path from your perspective. So it truly is a new path. Now you might get done with that and be like, yeah, I like mama's path better. you know, and that happens. But if you don't experience these things for yourself, there's an opportunity for resentment. There's an opportunity for not really stepping out on what you believe, on what's true to you. Because at some point, our parents grew up in a different generation than we did, than we're growing up. My kids are growing up in a different generation than I grew up. Their kids will grow up in a, now we can all be living in the same time, in the same time period, right? And still have different experiences in that time period. Um, and that's going to be based on your perspective and what you've been through and up until that point. However, they're going to see things differently. And I encourage each person, to walk your own path until, hey, the other path, that beaded path, isn't a bad path. But you really won't know that until you start trekking out on your own, using your own minds and your own thoughts. And I think part of what we're suffering from now as a society is that that beaten path just doesn't fit us anymore. It doesn't fit us on many, many levels. It doesn't even fit the boomer generation.
Things have been changing so fast. Conditions change, and that's always been true. That's why the rules of your parents don't necessarily serve the rules of the children. So that's like why it's built in that you will rebel, but because you have a better understanding, just intuitively of where you stand in the current timeline. Um, and so a lot of times we're borrowing these learnings from the past, which is important. We need to know our history so we don't repeat it, that kind of thing. And we also have to have the willingness to try out new ways of being in order for us to continue to evolve and grow as people in society. So it's all good. It's all good. But like, because even experience can teach you the wrong lesson if you're thinking about it incorrectly. If you have the wrong story in your head, it can be teaching you the wrong lesson, right? So we have to see that there's more than one way of skinning the horse.
Cat.
Oh, I thought it was a horse.
It's cat. No one skins horses.
People skin cats.
You have a question for this segment? Did a question pop up in your mind?
So I think for you, like, how do you learn best? Right? I think there's more than one way to learn. Everybody learns differently. How do you learn best? How can you best understand, put into context the stories of your life? Do you have to experience it yourself to know better? Do you like to learn from others and do that? And flip that on yourself. Like if you go through the experience, are you if you learn from experience, are you against learning from others? And if you are a learner from others, are you against having the experience teach you? Because I think that is like, I think that's where we get into those weeds a little bit. I think we need to know that about ourselves. So what we're trying to avoid and so make wrong is how we usually like to do that.
Right. And there is no wrong. Excellent. Segment 4. Mailbag. Your time to shine. All right. This is the segment when we take in questions from weeks past episodes. Monifa is a teacher. I am a consultant and coach. And so, and even in the course of our businesses, we get questions that we want to bring to the forefront to answer them here on our show, to give you guys some insight into some of the things that we might have learned this week. And I understand we have a question.
So this one actually came from somebody who was interviewing me this week. So the question that came in was, what do I need to know first to be successful in speaking or singing is actually what they're asking me. But also in sales. So it's something that I was like, well, what would be first if it was zero? It would be like a sales team, what do you call it, workshop or training.
Right.
Usually it's training. So yeah. So do you want to go first? Do you want to?
What do you need to know first from the sales perspective? So here's the thing about sales. There's always going to be different products. Okay. But you always have one product that you bring to all those other products. So you have to look at yourself as the first product. Okay. So when I start training new people who've never done marketing, who've never done sales, even retail sales, even working a front desk, anything like, if you've never done anything like that, the foundational thing that you need to understand is you're worthy. You're the cat's meow. You're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Because the way you feel about yourself reflects that career for you, right? So the moment you start to feel good about yourself and about what you're doing and about maybe it's a career change, maybe it's getting this new career started, maybe you just got out of high school and you're really trying to figure it out, I would always suggest sales with great training. Because the first thing you need to be trained on is to love and really have respect for yourself. So my first thing I always do is go through the process of filling you up with yourself so you can be confident and prosperous moving forward. How about you? What's the first thing you think people need to know in voice?
First, I just got to comment because this is one of the reasons why I picked this question, and I make sure to like tag Daryl in on this because I used to see he used to come home from like training and like we had another crier today. Really has this way of like getting to the heart of a person. And when they haven't had that self-examination to really buy into themselves, like first you have to see yourself to choose yourself, right? And so he would even like, do
Bring
you
a
want to
mirror.
tell him? He would bring the mirror. So that's the first thing that came to mind when I saw this question, and I was just like, "Ooh, yeah," because that mirror moment is real. It's real.
I don't use it anymore.
People just tear it down.
Way too strong of magic. That's some strong juju, bro.
Yeah, yeah. And but what he's also really great at is to have them recognize that where they stand, like where heartful, and that's how I think of it. But that they are already good enough, and they're already strong, and they're already worthy. So it's just a beautiful thing that I think people don't realize is important. And when you're about, sharing that heart, sharing what you have to offer with others. So for me, and the reason why I came up is because it's very, very similar to me. Where would I start is to value your voice. So if you understand the power that you hold just by having a voice, then I think people would treat their voice and themselves a lot differently. And part of that aspect is how we are different, what makes you unique. And we like the word unique, we love that word, right? We like the unique qualities because the unique qualities are the ones people want, right? But what we usually don't recognize when we're looking in that mirror the first time is that what makes you weird are those unique qualities. And so we're always trying to get rid of our weirdness and just keeping what people and trying to act like what people
Try to live up to
say
someone
they
else's
want.
expectations.
And what happens is that you become ubiquitous. You can't be picked out from a crowd. Nobody's going to see you or see your particular brand of worthiness if you're just trying to be as cool as other kids, right? So that's what coolness takes out of the equation. So, and what's so interesting to me about this is that I forget, we just watched a show or a movie or something, and when they said the word weird, like it was just like they were so wholly devastated because it was used as a criticism. You're weird. You're being weird. That's what they said. You're being weird. And like they were in their space having an emotional moment, a reaction, whatever. And so when the person said it, it broke through that kind of noise of what they were going through, and that devastated them in that moment. And I was just like, that's that's so bad to be like, because that's what, when making weirdness wrong is what makes us not want to be ourselves. Not wanting to be yourself is the opposite of self-love. It's self-hate, right?
Great.
So yes, we can have higher standards, we can look for greater mastery, but to think that there's something in the core of you that is wrong is not going to get you anywhere. So the first step is to know what your unique qualities are, what your weirdness is, and why it is good. Why is it good? Because there's a reason why you're made the way you're made. Serving somebody for one way or another, and until we understand the value of it, then we're not working in the value of it. We're letting it go into the garbage and not using it at all, or we're not valuing ourselves highly enough in it. And so people aren't respecting you at the level that you are worthy of being respected. So that's where I start for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think every individual is unique and special. And my experience in sales, why I was so big on a person being themselves and really loving who you were, it's kind of twofold. And so we'll pose it as a question. Are you holding yourself back because you're not letting yourself loose? Let go, man. Be you. Dig in 10 toes on who you are. Now, if you're some kind of psychopath murderer, don't do that. Don't do that. You know what I mean? Be somebody. Find a good role model. But you know,
And it's amazing how mentors can destroy your identity. It's amazing to me. You know, a lot of people don't know the history of this story. Hitler was a painter, Hitler was an artist. He went to art school and they told him he would never be an artist, he would never be a painter. He left art school and became Hitler. So, like, I think we gotta look at our, I mean, to me, this is like the potent element. This is why I say being yourself at the highest availability is what's of service to the whole of humanity, the whole of the earth, period. Right?
Not trying to be funny or anything. I don't think there would have been anything he could have painted to let a legacy that his name has left. So,
well,
you know what I mean?
I disagree. You know, what was that? There's a whole movie about it. Somebody's Men. I don't know. It was about an army troop that went out to recover all the paintings that Hitler took.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to bring all the epitome of art to one place that he owned. And to me, that just like if you're able to recognize talent, you are talented.
I mean, he was all his campaigns, you know, there were strict orders not to destroy museums. There were absolute strict orders not to destroy museums and churches where they kept most of the fine art in that time. So, agreed. His art, his love of art, kept a lot of art in existence today. Because if you want to destroy a culture, you destroy their art. That's the way you would do it. If you want to assimilate a culture, remove their art. All right. All right. Segment 4, the way we see it. And remember, guys, our topic this week is from religion to relationship, the inner rebellion. Now, we had some discussion on one of those words, the or inner rebellion, or the inner rebellion. No. The speaks of the process that we all have to go through, and I do believe we all have to go through. Rebellion speaks to a process that you can get into it or you don't have to. It'll be there when you're ready to look into it. I don't think in this time of social media, technology, and new information being released on a daily basis that you can put this question off anymore. I think this is something that has to move to the forefront of this internal rebellion. So let's start with what ChatGPT says about it. I like.
Give me 1 second.
Go ahead. Now I'll pull up the chat.
Give me 1 second. Okay. My guys, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about, right? Like, so what you heard is that I thought the or what I said was it's very much a Daryl hearing conversation. What I said was I would not use the word inner. I would not use the word inner because I don't think it's an inner rebellion. I feel like it's a rebellion, but the rebellion is the inner is what's telling you to rebel, like a truth. And I think that's elementally coming from the truth of what we understand to be truth, how we are able to discern truth. So what does ChatGPT say?
So ChatGPT, on the basis of the inner rebellion, says there's a moment in every king or queen when every king or queen wakes up and says, wait, why do I have to go through them to talk to him? It's like realizing your inheritance has been sitting in a vault this whole time, but someone gave you a pamphlet and said, Just read this and tithe 10%. Religion gave us rules, relationships give us rhythm. Religion gave us hierarchy, relationships gives us harmony. Religion gave us fear, relationship gives us freedom. That rebellion inside, that's not evil. It's your Ori. Now, I'm using the word Ori, which is a Yoruba word that means higher self or spirit. Okay. Which for ChatGPT, it's remembering who you are. It's Moses leaving Pharaoh's palace. It's Yahusha flipping tables in the temple. It's not Turner reading scriptures and realizing the God of the liberation wasn't the God of his oppressor. This ain't a rejection of the sacred. It's a return to it. So that's why I'm saying it's an inner rebellion, because we are indoctrinated with someone else's ideas first. Okay. We don't have no one, we didn't come out and the first thing we learned was, hey, little Daryl, little rebellious child, there's an inner God in you. There's a light so bright in you that your flesh isn't going to like how shiny it is. And you're going to rebel. You're going to learn things about who you are physically and who you are as an inner man. I wish someone would have tried to make me understand that at a very young age. Then there wouldn't have been such a turmoil, such a rebellion. I would have first rejected religion, right? I would have rejected the concept of someone saying that there's something higher than me that I had to respect and pay homage to. That would have been my first rejection, which it kind of was when I was introduced to church as a little kid. Like, and it wasn't an outward rebellion. It was, well, why can't I be Jesus? What makes Jesus so special that I can't be Jesus, Son of God? Well, who is this God? Show me the God that is greater than my Father. And as a little kid, I think every little kid should think that way. And I think religion has a way of pouring that doctrine into you, that kind of beats it out of you, because it beat it out of your parents, and now they're all aboard with it. So, yeah, the rebellion
Well,
doesn't
they
last.
really, like, fear really rules most religion because they're trying to scare you out of leaving the religion, the culture, the tribe. The tribe is essentially how we stayed alive in days past. So it used to be kind of useful to everybody think the same and everybody just follow the rules, because that's how the tribe would thrive, right? But again, as we talked about earlier, is that conditions change, like circumstances change. What kept you alive isn't necessarily going to keep you thriving. And so we have to start to view these things differently. But in essence, what it comes back to, it comes down to, is that as soon as we remove how we discern truth, and we talked a little bit about discerning in the last show too, right? How we discern truth is essential to being in awareness in what we choose in our lives and how we show up to life. And when you take away that ability to say, my truth is true, right? Which is what you say, like as a child, like, wait, what God is greater than my God? Like, who's going to tell me more or better than the wisdom that's within me, right? Because they know me. They knew me when I was born, and they knew me, right? They know me.
That God is truly omnipotent
That,
to you.
and that's like, and you don't know me. So how do you know that what you're telling me is what I need to know for my life to be at its full fruition, right? And so the rebellion to me is about recognizing that you're missing out on greater wisdom or truth because you no longer trust yourself. You're giving that trust to outside authority. And then when something goes wrong, you're saying, oh, well, the authority said I can blame them. And then I just have to go back to God and say, God, you told me to do that and it didn't work. And then so we advocate responsibility and we lose our ability to create things, to create change, to create something that's going to stand the test of time, even because what's now is built for what's next. But what's, we don't know if what was built 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago was built for what's next. I don't I don't know. Like, well, there are parts of everything. Some wisdom is truth. Some wisdom, that's why we see the truth in a lot of these religions. But that's the point. The point is you have to be able to trust yourself to notice it or to see it. And you have to trust yourself when you don't see it, right? If you're not seeing truth, if you're not seeing wisdom, and you're just buying into it because the authority said so, then we're running into problems, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if we're really being honest, that's where we are in this generation. Like, we're waking up. Does that mean that there's no need for religion? I don't think so. I think we still need a place for that understanding. I think we need to know the truth about. I think we're ready and in position to know more of the truth about religion, about where these books came from, because it's really just all ancient Eastern philosophy. It's the I Ching, it's the Bhagavad Gita, it's all of those ancient writings that are, hold on, thousands of years older than the Bible. Okay? We're not talking about, oh yeah, this was written 50 years before we got our Bible. No, this understanding is thousands of years older than the Bible. Okay? And if you really want to understand, it's serpent information. Okay? The cultures that studied this were considered serpent cultures. Okay? We live in an eagle culture. And it would be good for you to go out and find out what those two cultures look like. Just to give you a quick hint, one is peace and one is war. So, not to mention every major religion that we adhere to today got most of its converts from the tip of a sword. It's convert or die. Even in our culture here, when we're talking about our ancestral Americans, our ancestral Caribbeans, we didn't serve a religion the way they said. We're literally the pagans. We are the Wudan. We are all of these religions that they said were pagan, were wiped out. You understand? They weren't wiped out in that, oh, the wave of Jesus and Christianity or Islam and Muhammad or Buddha. All of these things had such a spiritual transformation over people that they dropped those other religions. That's not what happened. Okay? Those other religions disappeared because those people were unalived. You understand?
They were made illegal. Like,
they were made illegal and they were unalive for continuing in those beliefs. And those stories are still in the books. These stories haven't gone anywhere. They're still there. They still tell you that the people who believed other than what they were bringing were unalive. And that's what we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I believe it isn't in a rebellion, but I also believe that it's a part of where we are now in society. We are going back to the truth. Okay, there is a truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, I think that the idea that something can only be true when they tell you it is true, right? When somebody who knows what they're talking about can interpret, or no, what do they call it? Like, share the gospel, which they don't call interpretation.
No.
But but it is. And but when they're doing those things and they're saying that, oh, you can't know. That was back in the, like, those things do come from back in the day when we weren't allowed to learn how to read, you're not allowed to, right? So certain things was like, well, you can't read it, so let me tell you what it says. That, that's different. But if you can read, you should be able to tell for yourself what it means to you, right? And so that's those are the kind of things that really are they've lied to the point of making you think that truth means something that it doesn't mean. Because the reality is that even if you believe that you're receiving understanding directly from source or directly from God, you still have to trust that you have received it from God. So it always comes back to self trust. It always comes back to what you can discern about what is true. Even if you go and study 1,000 histories and 1,000 religions and all of the things, you still have to choose which knowledge is true for you, right? So there's never a point where we are not depending upon the trust of ourselves. And so if we're in the denial around that and we start blaming people for having their own sense of trust, it's not a good idea. But most of all, we need to trust ourselves to love ourselves. And if you're not able to trust yourself, you're not fully in love with yourself. And if you're not in love with yourself, that is where I don't know. This is where I
That's
think
where the
hell
things
is
that don't
created.
involve love come in.
Yeah,
That's when
these
not
are
love shows up.
that's where destruction happens. That's where hate happens. The only reason why you would hate somebody is because there's something you see in them that you aren't willing to deal with. And if you can't deal with something at its face value and still love, then that means that thing is something that you would hate about yourself. So that's still self hate. Even if you think it's about the other person and why you don't like that and you think it's ruined society and all the other things. No, because if you were that, you would hate yourself, you know?
Yeah. Still more insight from Chat GPT to polish this up. I think it cuts right to the topic. And we're not religion bashers. We both grew up through religion. You know, my mom's a pastor today, you know. So I just want to make it clear that we're not here to bash religion. What we are here to tell you is that religion was only meant to be a raft. It is not a boat. It is meant to get you from one side of where you are to the other side and drop you off. Okay? There's only supposed to be a raft from one side to the other. Okay, now let me give you what chat talks about. This topic cuts to the root of the awakening many are experiencing. Religion, in its colonized form, taught obedience and external authority. Pastors, preachers, and patriarchs, while silencing the divine compass within you. The inner rebellion is not a rebellion at all. It's a return to your own divine mind, a revolt against programming that made you bow before man while ignoring the creator's voice inside of you. Many are spiritually hungry for remote, but emotionally confused. They have left the church, but didn't yet find their relationship. So now they're floating, detached from tradition, but not yet reconnected to purpose. The space in between. You're in the wilderness. That's where your higher self whispers and the flesh fights back. See, that's a battle that they talk about the flesh all the time in church. They talk about you and your flesh and how you and your flesh are corrupted. They don't talk about the other part of you that helps uncorrupt your flesh. They assign that to who they want you to believe in. Mm-hmm. So that's a very important part about this topic. This topic is not about beating down religion. It's not about beating down Christ. It's not about beating down Buddha. It's not about beating down any of those, because that's who they're talking about when they're trying to get you to understand those other deities. They're talking about the deity in you. But because it has a name, you think it's somebody else.
Well, and I wanted to speak to like the corruption of the flesh that's often spoken about in these houses. And 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 what we're referring to is not necessarily that the religion is bad. Like we're saying, we're not saying that we don't want or need religion. We're saying that the body can be corrupted, right? But so in other words, the body of religion is the structure. So it's whatever sect you think you're in. It's whatever right way to do it is.
Right.
So the structure, if it's not supporting the truth of getting to the other side of the river or the water, right? If it's not actually supporting you getting to the other side, then it's no longer functional. And that's what happens is that older structures, the reason why they have to fail is because they no longer serve the current condition. And so this is why we got to be careful when we throw out structures, because they're built a way for a reason. There's a way that we understand our relationship with our higher spirit and self. And so we do need community. There's certain things are never going to go away. We need community. We need routine. We need devotion. These are things that aren't going anywhere in a healthy spiritual structure, right? And so, again, don't abandon things that are good, but be discerning of what is true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. So, question for the segment.
How do you feel about religion?
Yeah, how do you feel about it? You can still be in it and not fall prey, if that makes sense. You really have to be careful. I would suggest everyone listen to the book, like really listen. Like Yahusha said, seek the single eye. That means meditate. The instructions are in there. It was just disseminated to us in a way that took the onus away from us and gave it to another person, another being. All you have to do is just flip it and return it back to an internal book. It's not a book about a man's journey. It's a book about man's journey. We all go through those experiences in the Bible. There's everything in there that relates to living today, and so we have to just say, okay, we're not talking about Yahusha, the Christ that lived 2,000 years ago. They're talking about the Ori, or the higher self that lives in me. And most of it is allegory and parables. So it shouldn't be taken as a story anyway, unless you don't know what allegory and story means. Google it.
Yeah, that's what Google's for. But yeah, because even that's in the Bible. Even that's in the Bible.
It tells you.
For people who still feel like that's the only truth, there's a lot of revelation in the Bible. It's just that we've been given the lens of which we should see it, and then we don't see anything past it. And there's so much in the Bible. There really is. It's just that it's
still a very powerful book.
The only reason that I don't use it as a constant reference at this point is because it takes me back to the lens of which they gave me, right? Because that was the initial lens. And so I have to truthify it, right? I got to say what the truth of spirit is, or the truth of Godhead is, what is the truth, because otherwise, it's not useful. It's just another impediment from old ways of being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastico. Segment 6, from here to there. Let's reflect on today's episode and get you guys ready for a very powerful week that you're going to have moving forward. Cool beans, man. This is the very touchy episode, bro. When you're talking about someone else's deity, God, for lack of a better word, because there is better words than God. Do your research. Stop relying on people to tell you what your higher self already knows. The only thing that doesn't know it is the meat suit. The meat suit has no clue. So the meat suit bought into all of those things. And that's where I feel that the rebellion is. The rebellion is taking those things that the world has taught you and re-examining them under the lens of your own psychology and philosophy. And I thought it was really, I thought we gave you guys some tools to help with that. Um, I feel like some of the insight that we have should be useful, but it's still all based on you. It's still going to come through your perspective and the way you see it.
And wherever you are is fine. That's something I say constantly in sessions too. Like wherever you land is fine. Wherever you are is fine. It's really just about deciding what's next for you and deciding what you want to be enlightened to and what will continue to. I mean, that's really how we came to this understanding. It wasn't because we were trying to get away, but that's the part of it too. Like, I don't feel like we were trying to get away from Christianity.
We were trying to get deeper.
We were trying to get to the truth and the heart of what we knew by our own experience, which was mostly in church at that point. And so the more that we wanted to know the truth and that we weren't willing to buy into lies because the lies don't bring you closer to God. That's what we understood. The lies aren't going to get us closer to God. God would not need to lie to me. Right? And so our goal was just to be more in the truth so that we could be more of our God selves is what we know now. But
I remember the first question we asked. What was the original name of God? Why do we use this name?
Right.
We found the answer, by the way.
Yeah. It's a road. It's a road. So you have
some people still use that. You have to be
willing to go down that road. Yeah.
Some still use it. The original name of God is Yah. And some still use it.
Yeah. It's so true. And by the way, Rastafarians call God Jah. By the way,
Jamaica, which would have been a Y before the 5th century.
Jamaica was originally, before it was so you can say it, named as Yamika.
Yamika. Yeah, I know that. Because there were no J's. Who knew? Well, thanks for joining us, guys. We really appreciate that. This was our 9th episode. We are going for big number 10 next week. And very, very awesome 10 episodes. I never thought we would get. I really didn't. I didn't know where this was going to go. Like I said, in a couple of comments that I made on Monifa's YouTube, that it's been fun. It's more fun than I thought I would have doing this. But I'm enjoying it. We're gonna continue. We've got our first goal out of the way next week, which will be 10 episodes, right? It's almost like we can start season 2.
I mean, you might as well. I mean, the numbers are relevant. I think mostly for us, right? It's the way.
Well, before we pour anything into this, we wanted to see, can we do some episodes to see if it was worth getting new mics, new lighting, pouring more production.
As we go.
Are you watching? I'm looking. I see you.
We see you.
See if the engineer can get this right.
Takes 3 clicks. Oh my gosh. It is Mercury retrograde, by the way, just in case you forgot.
I join Monifa on her lives, man. She does some free readings, gives you guys an opportunity. She also does the monthly full moon guides. So tune in to Monifa Harris on YouTube.
Well, much love. See y'all next week.